got a lot of great filmmakers who made their debuts in the early 90s directing indie films such as Richard Linklater, Robert Rodriguez, and Quentin Tarantino. And also a director who I'm a huge fan of, but I've never really talked about before, Kevin Smith. Kevin Smith is a director who is even more talented in his writing, who has made several movies over the past 20 years, most of them comedies, but he's also delved into horror as well. And his movies are, almost all the time, extremely raunchy, very R-rated, and they border on being both clever and also extremely juvenile. And most of the time, his movies are extremely entertaining. Even when he's not at his best, I usually have a very good time watching his flicks. Kevin Smith's first film was the $27,000 independent comedy, Clerks. Made possible by loans through family and friends and maxing out his credit cards and risking putting himself in debt, Kevin Smith made a movie about two clerks who work at a side-by-side convenience store and video store. And these two stores were actually where Kevin Smith really worked at the time he made the movie. His boss allowed him to film as long as it was after hours. And using some friends and some legit actors, and knowing what he had to work with, he made the whole film pretty dialogue-driven. Most of the film is just conversation between the two clerks, the people they encounter like the customers, their girlfriends, and two drug dealers who hang outside the store, who would become the main thing that connected Kevin Smith's early films, Jay and Silent Bob. Jay being played by Jason Mewes, and Silent Bob being played by the big man himself, Kevin Smith. Silent Bob, as his name suggests, is a man of almost no words, but when he does talk, it's usually something that brings a lot of insight to the situation that's going on at the time. Despite being basically just a movie about people talking in a convenience store, there's a lot in Clerks to enjoy, a lot of very fun conversations about movies and pop culture, and anyone who works as a clerk can relate to the main characters, particularly this one scene where one of them says, "This job would be great if it wasn't for the fucking customers." None of the characters in Clerks are 100% likable. All of them have some pretty serious flaws, and at times they really piss you off. But that's part of how life is and how people are, and everybody's flawed, but everybody also has their good qualities, and this film I think is definitely relatable to anyone who's in the 20 to 30 age range. Even after 23 years, this movie is still a pretty good classic. Another very unique indie film is the early 2000s cult classic, Napoleon Dynamite. Napoleon Dynamite, it's really hard what to make of it. It's not your average movie, and a lot of the storytelling and characterization is honestly kind of weird at times. It's a movie where almost all the characters don't really show much emotion, which sounds bad, but the way they do it is pretty interesting. Every character is pretty down to earth, or they come off as tired, or they just seem miserable. And it's hard to say what it's about other than it's about a nerd played by John Heater named Napoleon Dynamite, who I guess is just trying to do something meaningful, I guess, and he kind of finds that when he meets the new kid at school and collaborates with him and this soft-spoken girl to get the new kid elected class president. All the while, Napoleon has to deal with his cheesy romantic brother, his pervy con-artist uncle who's moved in while their grandmother's in the hospital, as well as a bunch of stuck-up jocks and bitchy cheerleaders at school. It's really impossible to describe Napoleon Dynamite in such a short video. I recommend checking it out and just seeing it for how odd and unique it is, and it's not for everybody, but 2 out of 3 times, most people usually end up enjoying it in some way. And this movie only cost about $400,000 to make, which is bigger than the average indie flick, but lower than the usual mainstream movie. And for what he had, director Jared Hess was really able to make the scale of this film look much bigger than it actually was. And he also was really able to make this movie have kind of a retro feel to it. And I think this is a good note to go out on. There's a scene where Napoleon Dynamite watches a dance instruction video, and he watches it on a tape, that he puts into a Betamax player. So just to be clear, I recommend Clerks. I am sure you will definitely like it. And I also recommend Napoleon Dynamite. I'm sure you will at least find it interesting, but you may enjoy it. And if any of you have seen Clerks or Napoleon Dynamite before or after this review, leave a comment down below and let me know what you thought of them.